So, hello and welcome to the Prismatic Congress, a broadcast by the Prismatic Imperium based in QBO, an active player group that makes up part of the Ashling Duval community and specializes in roleplay. I am Mr. Lord Warden for the branch of Vigor, and it is the 29th of March, Sunday. And due to DST change in Europe, we are now at 2100 hours game time. As far as game news are concerned this week, we don't have the full news, but we have news about news, which is about the upcoming Fleet Carrier update. This coming week on Thursday, April 2nd at 1800 hours game time, there will be a live stream on YouTube that is pre-recorded by Frontier and will reveal more about fleet carriers. So we are as excited as you are about what the details will be, but nevertheless, we got some initial outlook at a few numbers. One of these numbers is one that we knew from the original announcement, which is that the fleet carrier has a max jump range of 500 light years. And you can jump whenever you want. However, there is a build-up and cooldown period between these jumps. As far as this cooldown period is concerned, we will have to wait for the stream, I presume. The fuel that allows us to jump the fleet carrier is called tritium or tritium, whatever the correct pronunciation on that is. Also, no details so far on how to get it. Fleet carriers have 16 landing pads for you and your friends, and their initial cost will be 5 billion credits. In this first announcement post, a link will of course be in the description, they say 5 billion at launch. So that's an interesting statement there. It remains to be seen whether that means they have plans to increase or decrease the costs as after launch. And we also don't know any details on modules or upgrades yet. So that could just be a base price, and you can change equipment, upgrade your fleet carrier for even more credits, or maybe not. We will see. So much for one thing I almost forgot is there was also a note that you can manage your carrier's finances by setting tariffs and adjusting the buying and selling prices for commodities, which suggests that they also have a commodity market that players can adjust. So that's one interesting bit that I'm also eager to find out more in the upcoming live stream. We also got a few dates for fleet carriers. The first beta with fleet carriers will begin on April 7th on PC only, and there will be a second beta in May for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. The current plan for the fleet carrier update is to be released in June, but Frontier said that the exact dates are not yet revealed, and the timeframes might change slightly depending, of course, on how the first beta, for example, goes. We will hear more about these dates and the development further, and I assume there will also be more announcements on the bug fix part of the patch, as we had in earlier news and covered last week. The fleet carrier updates is combined with the second big bug fix patch. Some more details on that also remain to be seen. And with that, let us head over into the branch news. First of all, branch of Vigor. And it is me right again, Lord Warden for the branch of Vigor. And I honestly have to say, I do not have much to say in terms of news for the branch of Vigor. I am absolutely delighted that activity continues to be great, and we have a small but very active number of commanders that is working in game, and that makes me very happy to see we're making good progress. The mood seems to be good, and yeah, there's really not much otherwise to say for me this week. Is there anything I could pad this segment with? I don't think there's anything in particular. I can say a few words about the Vigor roleplay, which is starting to pick up again. So if you are interested in that part, now's the time to read up. Make sure that you got all the backgrounds on it. So if you are interested in following what will happen next, that you are up to speed on everything that has happened before. But with that, let me hand over to Lord Headmaster Tekoran for the Branch of Sight.
Good day, everyone. It's me, your favorite Lord Headmaster. Well, I can just repeat what my fellow Lord Warden just said. Everything's running fine here. Currently, a lot of head researchers and general the students are looking into the direction of the announcement of fleet carriers. I mean, yeah, none of them can buy one, but I'd like to buy one for the Branch of Sight, of course. We're going to plan new and exciting adventures that never happened before, like traveling to a system nobody else explored. With a fleet carrier, it will be much more interesting to carry out operations across the galaxy on a remote ship. I've also started my work on the Branch of Sight-specific news that will hopefully come over the next weeks. They're going to be a bit anti-Vector-like, but also contain a lot of important scientific progress from the Emerald Observatory directly. If you're looking for a new expedition, there will also be one coming in the next months, probably also with the fleet carrier for the first time. So it will not only be a normal expedition, but also one with our fleet carrier, if everything works, hopefully. Alright, yeah, so it's pretty silent here because most of our researchers actually have time off and spend a lot of time at home doing a lot of things I have no idea about, hopefully nothing with terrorists. I know, the Syndicate is everywhere. Keep your eyes open. We need every single spy there is, so we can hopefully and finally return to our normal lives pretty soon. Let's get over to the Branch of Mind that's hopefully not infected by Syndicate agents already.
Hello, it is I, the Lord Herald of the Branch of Mind, and welcome to my favorite segment where we talk about the Branch of Mind news, which of course there are none. Just kidding. There's always news in the Branch of Mind. So really only big things I have to mention this week are just the continuation of the role play that's been going on. So definitely jump in and get involved in that, since it's not session based, it's very open. So other than that, just looking at my reaction to fleet carriers, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to establish myself more active in the game somehow so I can continue the upkeep on a fleet carrier. So I'm curious about what the details will be, because the last thing I want is a fleet carrier getting dismantled and putting me in the negatives. So other than that, I'm pretty excited. I am most excited about the tease of base building, to be honest with you. Not that it has anything to do with Mind yet, but I'll find a way to connect all that. Anyway, other than that, it's just been work on the back end for me. I've been working on portrait stuff and got a couple new things getting cooked up right now, mostly for the codex and for characters that will be met later in the season. So I'm not sharing everything that I'm working on, but hopefully you'll be involved and you'll get to see that and you'll enjoy that. So I think that pretty much covers all I have to say for this week.
Thank you. I have a couple of more things I can bring up for discussion, but that is precisely that. Topics I'd like to move over into the prismatic discussion section. So let's head right there.
Prismatic discussion. Prismatic discussion.
Well.
Prismatic discussion.
Well.
Right. First thing I'd like to quickly look back at is the upcoming Drew Wager Law Tour. Our dear Lord Headmaster has posted the full details on what you can do to get into that in our events channel. So make sure that you check that out if you are interested in the Law Tour event. I think the whole thing runs from April until August, is that right?
Yep, it's one of the longest tours you'll ever go to. And you earn a lot of reputation and diamonds, even if you just visit one of them.
It's very lovely. Yeah, so if you are interested in Elite Law, definitely check these out.
Of course, the most important thing is to visit them because of the lore. You see, Drew Wagar has said that some of the places we're going to visit have mysteries nobody else knew before. So there might be something Ruxla or Cubio 8 related in. Cubio 6.
Okay.
I'm excited about QBO 6.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll ask him about that, don't worry.
I would love to go to these events myself, but it is at a time every Thursday where I don't think I can participate. But nevertheless, I think he is doing live streams of it, so I can possibly catch up on these streams and stay at least a bit up to speed of what happened there.
I'm also offering 2 seats on my kata if anyone wants to experience that with me.
That is helpful. Especially for everyone who's out somewhere else and wants to get over there quickly. Multi-crew is always an option.
There are several preparations you have to make before taking part in this event. For example, getting the required system permits.
Right. You need a permit for Seoul, Akanar, and Alioth, right? So every capital system for the 3 superpowers.
Indeed. There's also one lore tour location on his list that doesn't have a specific location and was just blank. So maybe there's a surprise in there as well.
Raxla.
Cubio 6.
Or that.
I'm pretty sure I already know where QBO 6 is.
Hey,
QBO 6 where they're hiding
Mind knows
fleet
everything.
carriers.
It's on the 14th of May. Start point redacted. A description: The Dark Wheel and Raxla. Title: The Great Mystery.
Yeah, see?
But does he plan on actually showing up in game? Because like that's a recipe for getting ganked.
Well, you see, one of the rules says don't gank.
Has that ever
Exactly.
stopped people?
Yeah, but there's going to be a police force that ensures that the laws are being followed.
He's doing it in a private group, as far as I know, where he's present himself, and everyone who is PvPing will be booted out of it. But as far as I remember, everyone is invited to participate, even in open or solo, and just watch the live stream.
Exactly.
Fair
I
enough.
don't know if a private group has a maximum capacity of people, but he invited me personally into his.
I assume if Distant Worlds worked out fine with private groups, then Law 2 should work out fine as well. But yeah, eager to follow up what happens there, especially these mystery entries. It might be very interesting.
Of course. Over the coming weeks, I can give you a short summary of all spots, because there will be a lot of them.
And the next thing to obviously hit in our discussion is fleet carriers. We've already talked or brainstormed that in High Council that we will be playing the beta to test these out. Since I don't have the 5 billion yet and didn't really bother making much money for it up front without even knowing what the price will be, I don't have that, but I would assume that they will be cheaper on the beta, so that money is not an issue.
They should want people to test it.
Right.
Kevin, do you have the money too?
No, of course not. I'm about halfway there, probably.
Fair enough.
So some of us are going to be pretty busy if we're going to want to be able to afford that.
I could
So
buy one for every branch.
you could,
Unfortunately,
but I don't think the system works that way.
yeah, unfortunately, you can just have one.
You'd be at a
Oh.
pretty tremendous loss dropping a lot of cargo for me.
Yeah, but it seems pretty interesting that the Lord Herald, one of the richest people in the entire system, can't afford a fleet carrier yet.
He only has our local diamonds currency. He has no commander credits.
Actually, that does raise an interesting point in that if you can set tariffs and set the prices for commodities, that just became the best way of giving money to people.
Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can also see potential for exploits there. I'm not entirely sure how that will work out and what the limitations of that systems are. So
I suspect limitations.
if you are just juggling modifiers, maybe, so that you can, for example, say, I want minerals or mine commodities to sell well at this fleet carrier, whereas other things, of course, cannot be sold for that much then, so that you have some kind of budget in terms of profit-making sales you can juggle. Or if you are really having much more freedom, I don't know, and I don't know what the potential possibilities to abuse that system would be.
Yeah, I know. As for right now, the economy works by modifiers off of a base state of 1. So I suspect that you probably have just a percentage range you could adjust by, and it's a pretty small percentage, like maybe a 5% or something, one way or the other. 5% discount or markup. I'd be really surprised if they gave us the full freedom to set prices for whatever we wanted.
Would be also interesting to know whether that is affecting only other players that dock at your carrier or you yourself. So if you could, in theory, park your mining carrier right in the system where you do your laser mining, LTD mining, whatever, and set it so that you can sell it for the maximum price there, or if there's more
That's
limitations on that.
that's assuming that the product dies as soon as it gets sold at your carrier. I don't know if that's the case. Like, what if you have to turn around and then sell that cargo in some automated fashion where you'd
Oh,
be
you
at a
mean
second loss?
you mean that there's some kind of inventory system behind it, even?
That's what I'm wondering, because otherwise, yeah, that establishes to where you could just keep selling whatever you want at a 200% markup, which I know that's not going to be. There's no way they're going to allow that. And then to let you be able to do that indefinitely is just incredibly unlikely.
It's an interesting thought that your fleet carrier practically has some kind of cargo bay, and whoever flies to your carrier and sells stuff, it actually is in that fleet carrier cargo bay, and you kind of work with that and can send it somewhere else, for example.
Yeah.
Just imagining Techeron with a bunch of slaves down on that cargo bay.
more work for the auditing team.
That is definitely a lot of auditing potential.
Fleet carrier will only be used for science.
If people can actually sell you stuff at your carrier, then that's the perfect opportunity for tax audit.
Oh man! Oh, how'd this illegal drugs get here? Oh, that's weird. As I'm like tossing them into the cargo hold.
Well,
Yeah.
have a look at people's inventory of the diamond market. There's also a lot of drugs there.
We just Otto starts finding tech actual diamonds every week, every time he sells illegal material into his ship.
What's that SpongeBob meme? Or meme? Like we told you the first time, old man, where they're just beating up on the old guy.
I'm not
Tech
familiar.
every week. I'd have to look it up and post it in off topic later.
Yeah, so definitely eager to check out the beta there. They said that they, of course, want to beta test both perspectives, which is the owner of a fleet carrier, but also the guests. So there will possibly be a lot of tomfoolery with what you can use these for when you visit other fleet carriers. And one other question that we still have no clue on how that was supposed to work is to what degree fleet carriers can be attacked or even destroyed. There were hints about that and a lot of talk about it in the past, but it's something that I also hope for more details in the upcoming live stream.
Yeah, I suspect we'll learn all of that soon enough. If you want my opinion, I don't think your fleet carriers can be destroyed, but I would be interested to learn if they could be damaged, similar to the way you can damage current mega ships, and then have it where you'd have to do some basic repairing as perhaps an part of your upkeep costs. It seems to me like the fleet carriers are just a means to really keep people engaged and active in the game. And hopefully in a better system than the way Power Play worked out. Because that was originally what Power Play's goal was as well.
Ideally, I'd see fleet carriers really tie into every kind of activity with a lot of quality of life improvements mainly. That entire market you can set your prices thing completely surprised me because I never expected something on this level. I mostly just expected the quality of life support from having your personal movable docking station basically.
The reason why the price management thing really interested me is that ties into my theory and suspicion of base building. And the reason why that works together is because, again, I'm thinking there must be an inventory on your ship. And if there's an inventory on your ship, that would obviously tie directly with base building, which would come with a slew of other types of cargoes that are commodities that are not in the game currently.
It's certainly a very plausible theory that this already introduces some initial systems that also tie into the upcoming big update.
See, I suspect that on a fleet carrier or a base that you can build, you'd have some basic refinery options for yourself so you can actually fabricate some commodities. Probably commodities that don't exist on the market because present. But I suspect there's going to be a lot of that tying together. But it's really hard to say what everything's going to look like because I also believe with this next purchased DLC, they're kind of rewriting a lot of things. So who's to say the market is still going to run by modifiers instead of quantities? It might actually become quantities. So really, who's to say how anything's going to work? That's just my suspicion, just from the little pieces, the little details that I've either seen, heard, or was rumored about.
You've mentioned your interest in base building from the perspective of the branch of mind. Can you elaborate further on that?
Yeah, mostly for the branch of mind mission rewards. I would want to jump on that and tie that together. There could I don't know if I could easily connect it to role play. But mind is more than role play, or especially originally it was commerce and basically anything it was also for a while mining. I don't know if I still have mining, but I've got power play now. And just trying to find a balance with mind so that we have kind of 1/3 of game activity somehow. So if it were an option, I would try to find a way to tie that into mind with our mission rewards, because that's something that I think mind would encourage, having yourself established in some kind of lore friendly way in the game, something that grounds you other than being in a starship, which has always been my goal in Elite anyway, and really the whole reason why the branch of mind exists. Before the branch of mind, before the Prismatic Imperium, when it was just the People's Media, or me doing portrait paintings, my goal has always been to get you thinking beyond the seat of your ship.
It obviously depends on what base building will be and how that ties into the game again. We've speculated in a previous episode about potential for an entirely new crafting system, which is all speculation, but will be interesting to see how this plays out in the end. But nevertheless, yeah, I certainly see also a lot of potential in base building and having this second anchor, not just your ship that you fly around with, but also this thing you are putting your stuff in. The fleet carrier is obviously the first big step to that direction. You have something that is not just your ship that you outfit and invest into, but you also you actually have a mobile station, and it sounds like base building really is a step up from that. So they are potentially also learning a lot from fleet carriers and putting that to use in what base will be like in the end.
I'm sorry, was that a question to me?
That was thinking out loud mostly.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And giving you the opportunity to jump onto my thought.
I'd be very surprised if the base building was as elaborate as what we see in games like Subnautica or No Man's Sky. But that does seem like a natural step moving forward. Just looking at the pattern of other games that are somewhat similar to Elite, or at least has captured that kind of attention from other people that obviously desire some of these features. And Elite has piqued interest because it's an excellent space game. And I think Frontier are really trying to open up their audience. And there are a lot of people who are turned away from Elite because it is missing those things. Not to say that Elite's great without it. It's just they're trying to bring in more people. And this is the next natural step for that.
At least it's more friendly to newcomers these days.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Finishing up on my thought on why I'd be surprised if it was so open to where you can build things that don't really make much sense, just to or another example is in Subnautica you could build a frame rate killer if you wanted to. So I would be surprised if you had a lot of open freedom of, say, modular components. Instead, I'm thinking more like deployable inflatable sections of a ship that you could expand on in a limited fashion, but there'd be utility purposes with each expansion.
Right. So I've not played No Man's Sky or Subnautica, so I don't have a good comparison on what other space-like games do on that front. My presumption, without having any real idea of what we are going to see, is that it will mostly be similar to ship outfitting, but in a more utility kind of way. So that you start with, I don't know, a core base structure, and then you can add base modules to it basically, and all of these
Mhm.
have their own modifiers and utility things. I honestly have no idea what it could be. It could be adding a commodity market, I don't know, or just something, as you said, a refinery that ties into some crafting system.
I'm also looking back at some old features that have obviously been reimagined as time went on. But back when Braben was doing all the announcements and such, I know that something that was huge on the agenda was crafting, and not in the way that we have it now. Not in the way engineering is, but actual crafting with. So prior to there being recoloring purchases on the market for your lasers and your thrusters, that was originally something you would craft from materials you mined from for yourself or purchased, and then you would work that into a crafting system that doesn't exist in the game and build your own modifiers that you would then set into your ship, and that would do things like change the color of your lasers. That one was a specific example that was mentioned, was laser colors. Um, and of course, I remind you, this was before that was an option in game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of that original um, kind of dream plan show up in a different iteration. Just because it was on the plan, it was something that was intended to be done, along with base building and space leagues, and so that was all supposed to tie together.
Right. They will obviously have to make some kind of motivation and for gameplay purposes that you may want a base for. That could be related to the new FPS thing, whatever that will be, that comes with the big update. That you kind of craft new items for that, maybe. It remains to be seen, but there should be some kind of gameplay feedback and just getting opportunities to improve your gear, basically, which is kind of an MMO analogy here. But I also like the idea of cosmetic upgrades and cosmetic crafting, and we have seen at least some evidence that they are considering it when they added unlockable customization options. We had there's the Thargoid thing you could get for what is it if you
Oh, the
have
bobblehead.
yeah, the bobblehead, right? For I think a heart and 10 samples or so.
Yeah, something like that.
That you can just unlock basically by playing the game and doing something related to target hunting. So I was that was nothing big or anything, but I think it was a somewhat big deal because it is kind of a precedent for just opportunities by doing something cool in the game to unlock cosmetics, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something else I wanted to touch up on related to the FPS.
Go ahead.
I personally haven't seen a lot of official material announcing FPS, so if that exists, I'd be excited to learn more. But one thing I do know that was intentional was the the starport designs. A lot of them having those 0G arrays in the back of them. I'd love to see how that would come about, or if it could come about. I know I'm pretty confident that originally the idea was if CQC was more popular than it is, um, then that was going to be their next natural step for when there was FPS, if that made it into the game. They would have a CQC style game mode that was you on foot, you moving around as a person in an FPS fashion, jumping around with jetpacks or whatever. Your thruster suit that's I believe worked into a modification of the Grant suit. I could be entirely wrong. I don't know. But there were concepts of the flight suit having thrusters on them so that you can maneuver around in zero gravity. Quite different than what we see in our role play with the jetpacks and stuff that I created, because those are inspired by my own personal projects. And I don't know if Frontier, I don't know how much influence is shared there, since I did do a lot of portraits before the any of this was even concepted publicly. So anyway, those arenas were intended to be a CQC. So I'm curious to see if that would be an early into implementation of FPS, unless Frontier entirely surprises me by having FPS absolutely everywhere. I would imagine that as a test launch, we would only see it in very confined spaces, which would potentially include ship interiors, ship hangars, and maybe inside like a base building, if that exists, or inside certain areas of a station, which could include a CQC style arena.
Right. I think with base building being somewhat confirmed and the entire FPS thing being mostly just based on the leak, if that is coming together in one big expansion update. It is most likely that they went about the base building thing entirely from the perspective of tying that together with FPS. So I would be surprised if the first priority there is you being able to move around on your own base. After that, possibly some priority on actually being able to move around on stations. It would be awesome to be able to move around on ships, but we've touched that topic before, and the potential problems that come with it that we are not sure if Frontier is
Your ship would have to be docked, I bet.
exactly.
You'd have to be docked on something that had gravity for starts, I'd imagine. I think there's a little bit of hand waving on how strong gravity is, because I'm pretty sure you can walk around in 9G in Elite Dangerous because reasons. The same reason you can still operate your SRV on a 9G planet, with your arms actually extended out using the throttle. So if we're strong enough to do that, I imagine we could walk around on a 9G interior or ship that was landed. So either a base or a ship that was landed on a 9G world.
You
Or
can also
perhaps,
like
Go
detonate
ahead.
your SRV and poof back up to your ship. So maybe that's just telepresence.
It could be telepresence. You can also poof in your ship at 9G and show up at the last station you were. So maybe that was also, I don't know. We could be telepresencing a telepresence.
Best escape pod in the
Secretly, all
world.
of our commanders are just like in home in bed.
More than likely. Yeah. I mean, CQC Arena is actually a telepresence. In case that wasn't fully explained, I know it just looks like a different game mode, but there was actual lore behind it because there are actual companies in game that are producing the CQC simulations, and I think simulation was a key word there that kind of inspired this season's roleplay. Was like, so CQC, they're just being honest about it. It is a simulation. It is a virtual reality experience that
Yep, nice
commanders from
references.
anywhere can jump into by telepresence.
Nice references. Laying out like a little frame story for that in the Joe Wager book. In what was the second one? Premonition, I think.
I've actually been kind
yeah,
of reading through that one, and there's a chapter on a guy going through that. Like he's at work in virtual reality, competing in the
exactly.
championship.
Oh,
exactly.
fun.
So Elite likes to draw on the concept of VR a lot. So
Yeah.
for basically anything where you think, how does this actually work that I am there? The potential answer that they could have is, you're not there, you're just doing VR.
Mm-hmm.
The little things I've learned from the book: ships can dock with each other. It's like belly to belly sort of thing.
Yeah,
That is true. There's also the grappling hooks and whatnot, but we don't see that in the game currently. But
where's the classic tractor beam?
Yeah, come on.
no classic tractor beams. The closest we have to tractor beams is frameshift frameshift drive interdicting. But there would certainly be
yes.
cable hooking, so you could dock yourself with another ship against their will.
I mean, harpooning is certainly cooler than tractor beaming.
Yeah.
Get really good with
magnetic
it and catch them
harpoon.
through the canopy. Like what else?
Oh no. No, hopefully they're just a hologram at that point. Although I have questions, are the holograms interactive? Can you poke them?
The ship HUD holograms, or which ones?
No, your character.
Oh, the talent presence one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Are there motors in our flight sticks that reenact what we're trying to do with them? When you're steering around your ship. I mean, you got to remember, if you're so Otto just said when you self-destruct in an SRV, you pop up in your ship. but you can be docked on your ship on 9G and you're still at the controls, which means your arms must be strong enough to use the flight stick, assuming that was your real body on a
Could be
9G
like
world.
an expanse version of it where they pump like drugs through you so you can handle the G's.
I would be surprised if that was the case. I
There's
know
plenty of fun
originally,
drugs in Elite, like Hexadit.
true, yeah, but I do know there was originally some hand waving from Braben that was saying humans have adapted to space. That was his explanation for why we don't suffer from the ailments that we would suffer from in real life if we lived full time on a space station.
I can buy that. Why not?
So I have no idea how adaptable people are in the sci-fi world, but I mean, people are living on 1.2G, and they're still coming out 6 feet tall. So I mean, gravitation on Cubia is pretty normal, but I know there's some Earth-like worlds that are a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and by a little bit, I mean quite a lot.
QBO is 1.3 if I remember correctly.
Are you right about that? 1.3? That seems
It
extreme.
definitely was over 1.
You
Okay.
probably wouldn't notice it after a week or two.
You probably would actually.
Maybe 4 weeks, enough to get stronger.
Well, so if you came from Earth and moved to Cubio and it was 1.3, you would eventually die just from organ failure
That
because
little?
of that. Mm-hmm.
I would assume Elite has some kind of magic law tech that counters
Mhm.
that, so that you can adjust. But you would still kind of, really notice a difference between somebody who comes from Cubio versus somebody who does not come from Cubio. And considering that our own roleplay has a lot of people that are not native to Cubio, that is an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm. No, there's definitely hand waving there, just in the
You have a
lore.
bunch of sports teams going to like high G worlds just to train.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Like how whenever like Denver-based sports teams come down to sea level, they kick butt.
Yeah, but I mean, this is more extreme than talking about sea levels. Like I said, if you moved, going to Mars is one thing, but if we established a colony on Mars and they start raising kids on Mars, those kids would have a hard time coming back to Earth because their skeletons wouldn't be strong enough. I mean, we're talking about real life. Frontier obviously found a way around all of this because everyone's able to go anywhere and everyone's about 6 feet tall. Like everyone is averaged out somehow genetically. And so that was a prediction on what the future would be like anyway. Well, I think it went beyond that. They were looking at races and stuff. Like, what would a racial mix of the future look like? And they just, I think the consensus was we'd all look like we were Brazilian because
Interesting.
they're the most genetically mixed, I guess, in the world. But some of that stuff would apply to Elite Dangerous, and then some of it would just be hand waved because it's just too complicated. If you're too stuck on the hard science, space life would not be fun in reality. You wouldn't have the interconnected cultures. You wouldn't have systems that are spanning to multiple systems. You wouldn't have a faction that's able to control all these different worlds because they'd be so foreign and alien, and you wouldn't be able to hop from one planet to another like you do in Star Wars. It's just it's not realistic. But Frontier with Elite has looked past all that to make this a more unified, cultured experience where you can visit any planet you want to, and you won't die from bacteria as soon as you take your helmet off, or some weird disease, or your skeleton deficiency. None of that's really a concept in Elite Dangerous anymore.
I'd like to go back to the concept you mentioned of 0G arenas with FPS style combat. That
Mhm.
sounds super interesting. Is there any kind of precedent on how that works? I actually have a somewhat hard time imagining how that would look gameplay wise.
Well, you've seen Ender's Game, right?
No.
Oh well,
I
you
s-
should probably watch that movie. It's pretty
You
good.
mentioned thrusters on the flight suit, so I guess
So
that
you have a omnidirectional thruster. So you'd really operate similar to how you do in your spaceship, with the exception of being heavily influenced by your forward momentum. So basically, you'd just be able to go any direction you wanted and be able to spin yourself around, similar to flying ships, but you'd be a person using a gun and whatever. I really don't have a lot of information on this because I think a lot of traction with it would have been lost after CQC had its unexpected um, flop. That was intended to be something huge, and Frontier were generally surprised that it wasn't huge. I mean, they launched it as its own game on Xbox. You could just buy Elite Dangerous CQC Arena.
maybe that was precisely why it flopped. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of reasons behind why it flopped, and I think either way, I think they had to really reevaluate that. So that probably, I would imagine, I don't know this for sure, but I'd imagine that would have had an impact on planning what CQC would have looked like for FPS. I just know that I'm pretty confident that it was concepted. There's plenty of concept art circulating what it would look like navigating around your own ship in 0G. I said there were a lot of issues with that just because the game's complicated. What happens when someone bumps into your ship while you're not in your cockpit? Um, I just think of any other game that lets you do that, and how they have so many limitations on what your speed cap is for the purpose of you not glitching out of your ship. Because that requires your character being referenced with a moving object, which in video game history is so bad that usually there's teleportation magic involved. And if you want an example of when that didn't work, think of like Left 4 Dead 1, when you ride the elevator to the top floor of a hospital, and it wasn't that uncommon for your teammates to go falling out of the elevator through the floor just because it was moving up, as opposed to, say, some games like Fallout 3, where you jump in the elevator to the top of the Washington Monument. The whole monument is sinking into the ground, and you are actually stationary, since this is an elevator that lets you be able to see out and see up. So usually there's tricks involved to keep your player from moving, because when collision objects are moving, they are being retraced, recalculated frame by frame. And in a frame by frame system, there is always the growing possibility that your collision check does not have time to interact with what you are in. So you would essentially be flying outside into space, glitching right through the walls of your ship.
Looking at contemporary comparison, does anyone happen to know what the current state on Star Citizen is? How they deal with that? Has anyone? Is it
I've
even
seen a little
possible
bit of
to?
it. People are always glitching out of their ships in that game.
Okay, that
I hope
sounds in
that
line with
answers
the
that
rest of the
question.
game.
Seen some crazy
No.
stuff out of that game though. Like a guy was falling through the atmosphere and they caught back up to him with the ship and got him in it.
Yeah,
Okay.
great things can happen out of it. It's just the chances of bad things happening are pretty big too. Anyone who, I mean, I love the concept, but I said that what I was getting at is there was a lot of concept art of what it would look like to move around with your multi-directional thrusters around your ship in 0G, so that you can access your engineering modules. You've got your actual mod system, which would have been for inserting mods, kind of like in Subnautica, for changing your starship lasers. That has obviously changed. Um, or being able to fly on the outside of your ship and fixing uh, hull breaches. And again, you'd just be able to float around omnidirectionally with this minimalized jetpack system that was integrated into your suit. I would be surprised to see that feature actually working in space just because of gravitational pulls. Maybe it would work. I don't know. I just said that seems like there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the concept. But it would be very easy to implement that in an FPS confined system such as CQC. You've
Right.
got arena bounds, you can only go so far. You're inside of a contained arena, essentially, and they can have floating obstacles floating about. This is the way I'd imagine it. Floating obstacles that you can use for cover, and you'd be using customized weapons that you are purchasing for an astronomical price unless they worked in microcredits. And then there'd be a lot of modification potential with that, such as the colors of your weapon, the color of your outfit, essentially turning it into every other game that exists after that point. But that is how I visualized it. The simulated gravity might actually be done by spinning, since it's not spinning very fast. So they might have it instanced into a clone of an actual starport that is doing its rotations. I don't know. That'd be interesting to see. I don't think it's spinning fast enough where we'd have to be at risk of flying out of it, because I haven't seen anybody, generally speaking, fly their ship into a station, and then when they went to collide with something like the docking pad, they actually clipped through it. I think those kind of issues only happen on like login or something.
Isn't
And
your
that
favorite thing
is-
to do to clip into the habitation rings, though?
Yeah. I clip into the habitation rings, but that's an error in their collision. But yes, it is actually using the same concept. So in case anybody doesn't know, I can get a ship launch fighter inside the habitation ring of a spinning. What's that?
I think those ones
Station
are Oxalis ones. Those ones.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah,
pronounce
so
it.
I can clip into the habitation ring, and the way that I do that is essentially by cheating the frame rate of the game, because like I said, every single frame it's retracing the collision, and that is the fastest moving part on a station. So the faster something is moving, the bigger the window of clipping through it is. And if you think a station's moving that fast and it's spinning, it's really not that fast compared to how fast you can boost in some of these ships. And so those are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm talking about how it would be improbable to move about in your ship while you're floating in space, instanced with other people that can smash into your ship at these ridiculous speeds. But I'd love to see Frontier surprise me.
And I'm hoping we will get the corresponding information soon. So, of course, they will initially focus on the fleet carrier update now. But once that is out of the way, there's nothing that should be keeping them from finally revealing what this is all about. This is a perfect opportunity to also close the show for the day. So, thanks everyone for being here, and I hope we will have cool information on fleet carriers to talk about next week as some kind of fleet carrier follow-up. And with that, see you then and goodbye.